You need it for the camera? I can speak very loud.
Good evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Maplewood, South Orange, I'm pleased to welcome you to this forum. My name is Michelle Barbaro. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, and we are pleased to host you this evening. The League of Women Voters of New Jersey is a nonpartisan political organization which encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Elections and voting are core concerns for the League of Women Voters. We are committed to providing fact-based information about issues and the positions candidates take on those issues to help voters to make their own decisions and to participate in the electoral process. Conducting debates like this is one of the ways we encourage informed and active participation in government. Your participation today helps us carry out our mission, and we thank you for coming. In the election on November 7th, there are two general questions. There's information about them on the back table, as well as information about League of Women Voters. And there are also forms for voter registration. The last day to register to vote is tomorrow, the 17th. Your application, if you change your name or move or have new neighbors or have kids who have just turned 18 or will, the deadline for that is the 17th. If you want to submit a vote by mail application, the deadline for that this year is October 31st. If you would like to participate in any of the efforts that League of Women Voters has, we would be pleased to welcome you. We have both men and women as members, and information and membership forms are also at the table in the back. League of Women Voters never supports or opposes candidates for office or political parties. Any use of the League name or of footage from this debate in campaign materials, literature, or advertising of any kind has not been authorized by the League of Women Voters. Janine is taping this, and it will be available on Sona TV, and I will get that information out to you tomorrow when I get the specific information. Please turn off all your cell phones and other electronic devices, and no photographs are allowed either. Our moderator for this evening is Diane Gallo of the Berkeley Heights Summit and New Providence League of Women Voters, who will conduct the debate. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As you know, league rules do not allow a local person to moderate their own candidate debate. So I am helping out tonight for Maplewood, and we had some other people helping us last week for our candidates tonight. The candidates drew numbers. The candidates drew numbers. I don't know how to click this in on. Oh, that was I'm very technologically challenged. Please forgive. Okay, does that work? Mm-hmm. Okay. The candidates drew numbers to decide in which order they would be speaking. We only have 3, so it was not a very difficult decision. However, Mr. DeLuca chose number 1, and Mr. Deffis chose number 2, and Mr. Summerskill chose number 3. So that will be the order that they will make their opening statements. Their closing comments will be in the reverse. And their opening statements are 2 minutes each, and we might as well get right into it. We have 3 candidates up front. They're running for 2 seats. It's a 3-year term on the Township Committee for Maplewood. So without any other conversation, Mr. DeLuca, if you would like to go first.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this evening's candidate forum. I'm one of the men who is a member of the League of Women Voters, has been a member for many years, so I'm glad to see you in action. Maplewood is an inviting and welcoming, diverse and inclusive community, and we have been recognized as one of the best places to live in America, and we have the best downtown in America, in New Jersey rather, and probably America. It's a safe and vibrant community in which to live and raise a family, and I really love being on the township committee and representing the folks here and trying to solve our problems and work through and continuing to make our community the best it can be. I'm serving my 18th year in office. 12 of those have been as mayor, and I've had the opportunity over the years to work with great colleagues and hundreds of residents to make Maplewood the best around. I think I've done a good job and I get things done. I'm around the entire community. I'm very accessible. I believe government is a vehicle for positive social change, and I'm proud to promote progressive values and the need to respect and welcome all people. I've also worked to foster civic engagement and make government more transparent. I've expanded opportunities for people of color and women to take leadership positions as township employees and volunteers on boards and committees. Over the years, I've been a staunch advocate for social and economic justice. I've been a clear voice for inclusion and acceptance and against anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and misogyny, and against those who try to take away rights from the LGBT community and those seeking to demonize immigrants. I've signed on with Mayors Against Illegal Guns, the Mayors Combat. Which one? Was it the sign or the bell I was intimidated by? In any event, I have more to do, and I would ask for your vote on November 2nd.
Thank you. Now that we're awake, Mrs. Elvis.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting us this evening. Nearly 100 years of engaging and informing voters across the nation. It's a remarkable history, and I'm very grateful and very humbled to be part of that this evening. And I welcome all of you for being here. It's nice to see a crowd did show up eventually. I see some familiar faces in the crowd. Those of you with whom I've worked in the community already, and many on whose shoulders I stand. You have built this community, you have served this community, and I am deeply grateful for your support and very committed to serving and doing my part to help Maplewood become a stronger community, more unified, and to help our government work better. Professionally speaking, my background has been in social justice. I started out as an attorney in legal aid representing the underrepresented. And I moved on to work on Wall Street in cases involving massive financial fraud, from where I became an economic justice advocate. As an LGBT person, a gay man who grew up in the 70s when times were a lot different for gay folks across the country, I also did a lot of civil rights work for my community in marriage equality and ending conversion therapy, which is still being practiced in our country, believe it or not. And I've also done a lot of work in the community in terms of being a neighborhood watch person and an advocate for better improvements in different business improvement districts. And I'd like to bring all of that experience to helping us move forward and building upon our successes. And we'll talk about specific issues in that regard this evening. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Summerskill.
Thank you. My name is Mike Summerskill. I've been a resident of Maplewood for 9 years. Live here with my wife and 3 daughters. I'm really happy to be here with the League of Women Voters. It was an organization I wasn't as familiar with and found out more about last year. And it was one of my favorite parts of the political process. It's just a great institution that really supports the kind of democratic process. And I think the work they do on referendums is outstanding as far as making it accessible to everyone to understand what we're voting on. Today, what you're going to hear me talk about is my vision for Maplewood. It's something that I think is missing in the dialogue. We do a lot of reactive governing. I think we need to start with a clear vision of what we want for this town. What does it look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? our government processes to then support that vision. So whether it's budgeting, allocation of resources, giving marching orders to the departments about what we want to see them achieve. It doesn't have to be just one thing that we set as our vision. We can work to become a more age-friendly community, and I think we've started on the right path on that. We could work to attract more commercial businesses. We could have a vision that we want to reduce our reliance on New Jersey Transit so that we're not overly tied to the Midtown Direct Train line. Or maybe we take the other approach and say we want to be the best commuting town in the state so that we retain that status as a destination. So all those things are our arching vision, which I think should drive the process. And that's what I would bring to the Township Committee. You'll hear sometimes about the vision when Township Committee members start their terms, that first speech they give in January. I'd like that conversation to be happening now as we go into the budget session. So hopefully you hear about my vision tonight, and I'd love to win your vote in November.
Thank you. The league has come up with 3 questions that they have, I don't know if they've given it to you yet or not. If not, you'll be surprised.
Yes.
Okay, you're not surprised. The league has written 3 questions that they would like the candidates to answer before we move on to any other questions from the audience. So we're going to start with those, and you will have 2 minutes each to answer these questions. The rest of the questions will be 1 minute each, but these you do have 2 minutes. So just in switching around your numbers, we will start with, we will start with Mr. Deffis, and the first question is, what would you do to make Maplewood more of a community rather than a racially, culturally divided town? And you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Diane. This question really goes to the heart of my platform, and I believe it is really the largest challenge that we face as a community going forward. We are very diverse, we are culturally rich, we have an amazing community of engaged residents and citizens, but we are fragmented. Often you hear too many folks saying that they live in Maplewood, or they live in Maplegood, or they live in Maplewood proper. And it breaks my heart every time I hear that. So we have a challenge, and the challenge is to achieve greater institutional equity in our community and to help our government do that more effectively. And that really, really affects us at every level, whether it's access to services for all, including recreational services, whether it has to do with affordability, in particular, taking care of our seniors and making sure that they can stay in the community which they have built for all of us. It goes to economic development, fair and equal economic development all across town for everyone. It goes to the issues that our schools are facing. The issues in our schools are not separate. The schools are not on a different island somewhere else. They do reflect our community's issues. And with respect to policing, we really have an opportunity, a very important opportunity to reboot our police department going forward and make it more going toward a community policing model and letting it reflect the progressive values of our community. So I'm interested in increasing awareness on those issues. I'm interested in greater community outreach so we can bring everyone to the table in the community and collaborate with everyone. And I'm interested in opening lines of communication and achieving greater collaboration towards that effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Next would be Mr. Summersgill.
Thank you. The first thing that I look for as far as building a community inside our community is really looking at events that we have that have broad cultural appeal. I think Maplewood Sock's a good example of that, of finding musical acts that span the spectrum of ages, diverse acts, so that we had something that's attractive to multiple people inside the community. Recently had the craft beer festival on Springfield Avenue. I think the 3 of us all attended. I thought it was a good event as far as being inclusive and diverse. There's many minority-owned businesses on Springfield Avenue. It's great to see those business owners there and just interacting with them and speaking the language of beer, which gets harder as the night goes on. Porch Fest, we recently had that in the Hilton Neighborhood Association. It's a music festival on porches. I think the members of the Porch Fest committee did a good job of making sure that we had the whole Hilton neighborhood covered and not just the closest to Springfield Avenue. So those are good ways to create community-centered events that bring everybody together to talk about our common needs and desires and different perspectives. I think we also have to do a better job of having diversity on planning boards and committees, and whether it's the 4th of July committee or it's a formal township committee, that takes legwork to go out there and recruit and find people. Sometimes you have to look in different places than you've looked previously. I think that's one of the important roles of the committee chair, is to really go fill those seats and get those different voices from the community. I'm someone that was founded in athletics growing up, big team sports. I think that was a great background for making sure we're all marching in the same direction with a common goal, regardless of backgrounds. So I think we find opportunities like that inside the community. I think the Steph Boyd in outdoor classrooms, another excellent example of that, was a community project, brought people from the neighborhood, from the school, very different backgrounds, all working together and creating something that's really beautiful. And it's natural. It's not a forced, dynamic saying, we want you here because we want your diverse opinion. It's, let's work together. So those are the things that I would look for as a township committee member to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Duluth.
Thank you. One of the principles that I've tried to follow as I have served here in town is to approach this as a one Maplewood endeavor. That our appointments, our service delivery, our capital expenditures, the way in which we do business as a town should be about one Maplewood, no matter where you live, what area you live in, what neighborhood you live in. Everyone should be treated fairly and respectfully and include everyone. I want to give you 3 things that I think we need to focus on in order to make Maplewood more racially and culturally cohesive. One is the schools. The CCR Community Coalition on Race did a report and pointed out that increasingly our elementary schools are becoming segregated. And I think we have to address that. I think schools are the way in which we can get children and parents to work together, join together, recognize and treat everyone equally. We need to look at magnet schools, pairing of schools, single grade schools and programs so that we can bring people together. Unfortunately, our neighborhoods are somewhat segregated, so by using the schools and trying to overcome that housing pattern, we can bring together folks in a more cohesive way. Second is arts. I think arts can be both positive and negative when it comes to multicultural and integration. I think Mr. Summersgill mentioned a couple of them, the arts, the Porch Fest we did, which was deliberately, I was on that committee and pushed to make sure the whole entire neighborhood was included. Maple Woodstock has actually evolved to become more inclusive. So I think we need to focus on those arts to bring people together. And lastly, police and community relations. We have a breakdown between the police and the communities of color in Maplewood. And people of color in our community need to feel comfortable with the police. The police need to make themselves available, need to work with the communities of color and everyone so that we can build that cohesion.
Thank you. The second question. The recent report dealing with the South Orange Maplewood Fire Department study recommends a merger of the fire departments of South Orange Maplewood. Do you agree with this study, and are there any other departments, such as recreation, that you would study for future consolidation? And the first person to speak will be Mr. Summersgill.
Thank you. I reviewed the report, and this is probably one of the easier areas for me. Professionally, I work in operations. I've consolidated numerous departments, functions, locations, and as an engineer, it's something that's kind of in my DNA. I thought that the report was very comprehensive. I liked that there was suggestion of savings. One thing that I thought was missing from the report, which we'll take further review, is what are the costs that we need to incur to get those savings. So if there's any staffing reduction, you're going to have fees, early retirement fees, things like that. We paid nearly $300,000 to a police chief that wasn't doing his job. What's it going to cost to pay 85 personnel who were doing their job? So I do think we need to understand those costs before we make any kind of decision. And I'm assuming it was not part of the scope of the report, but it's something that definitely takes due diligence. I also wouldn't limit our assessment to just the consolidation of shared services. I think the town, there's always opportunity for improvement. Again, as someone that works in operations, I look for those opportunities. So you walk into town hall, and you get a jitney pass. It's essentially the same process if you walk into town hall and you get a pool pass. But it's 2 different departments, 2 different people that are basically performing the same function. So you look at those opportunities of where can we get efficiencies. And I also think that if we want to make big improvements in town, we're going to need to be more transformational and less transactional. And you need someone, again, that has a vision of how to achieve that. And it's a plan that's going to take more than 1 year. And so you need to look past the 1-year budget cycle. And I don't think you get there without that vision and that collaboration with the community about, again, what's that town that we want to be, and then how do we support those initiatives. And that's the discussion I would have with the constituents if I was elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you. I do support the overall goals of the consolidation of the 2 fire departments. I think we'll get more firefighters and apparatus at any fires or emergency in a quicker fashion. There'll be better coordination of fire services, and there'll be a cost saving through consolidation. No firehouses are proposed to be closed. The same number of engines and ladder trucks will be on duty at all time, and there'll be no layoffs under this plan. So we're looking to do this through attrition and to work into this. Now, there are some difficult topics that have to continue to be discussed, and we're going to do that. As far as the recreation program, we did a study in 2006 which talked about consolidating the health department and the recreation department. I actually supported the recreation department consolidation, not the health department consolidation. It talked about creating a joint center for cultural and recreational services. Not sure I would go that far. I think more recently the Township Committee has talked about functional sharing. That's keeping the programs and the administration separate, but sharing the programs. So we do that. Pool membership, now Soma 2 towns for all ages. We have a joint facility fee for maintenance, baseball and softball programs. We share a large fee grass cutting services. So we do an awful lot. In addition, we do shared courts and violations bureau with South Orange. We do shared property maintenance services with South Orange, shared community cable television station, which we're seeing here, and we do automobile repairs for South Orange. So we do a lot of stuff in the way of shared services. The most important thing is, when we look at these, is the service going to be comparable or better, and can we save money in doing it? Those are the guiding principles. And I think we have to look at it overall. I think as many services as we can share we ought to do, and we ought to look at other towns. We've talked to Union, we've talked to Springfield, we do some services with Milburn and Springfield, and that's what we ought to do moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you. I'm definitely in support of shared services and engaging in mutual aid agreements with neighboring towns, if it also means that, yes, we really are going to save significant money, we are going to reduce our tax burden, and we're not going to see a negative effect on services, the delivery of those services and the access to those essential services to our constituents. Those are the 2 important elements. The fire department study makes a compelling case for consolidation of our fire departments. It states very clearly and proves very comprehensively that there will not be an effect on response time and that we will save significant savings. I also have some follow-up questions as it relates to the report. I'd like to know, since we are going to keep our firehouses as is, both towns, what are the costs associated with keeping those running? Perhaps it's presumed that they're not as significant in the overall cost savings, but I'd like to look at that a little bit closer. I also have some follow-up questions as it relates to consolidating our EMT and EMS services, which is part of this structure as well, which the report addresses but does not go into in greater detail. So those are my follow-up questions, but generally I'm in support of shared services. I think we should do more of that. Mayor DeLuca spoke eloquently about recreational. Recreation shared services. Recreation is a low-hanging fruit. I don't know if we need to study that further, especially since it's been studied already and we already share a lot of recreational activities. I would be interested in studying proposed consolidation of DPW or Public Works. There's a lot of inefficiencies there, and I'd be interested in seeing a study to see if we could become more efficient and save money in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 3rd question. In light of recent Maplewood retail store closings, what would you propose to maintain the viability of Maplewood Village the Irvington Avenue and the Springfield Avenue commercial districts. Do you feel that the limited availability of parking is a factor? And the first person to answer will be Mr. DeLuca.
So I'm going to deal with the parking issue because that's always a problem. Yes, I do think that parking is a problem. And I think it's, we also studied parking and we found that between 12:30 and 1:30 in Maplewood Village, it's very difficult to find parking. So what we've done since that study is we've looked at ways in which we can move merchant and employee parking outside the village. Quite honestly, we still have a lot of it in the village. So we have merchants that continue to park their cars on the streets. We have a bank on the corner of Baker Street where the employees play car jockeying. They keep their keys together and then every couple of hours go out and move cars around. We have to stop that. We have to move those cars out into the areas which we've created for merchant parking. We sell a merchant parking permit for $25, and we're trying to get more and more people to do that. I think one of the things that we need to follow up on is we had a study from Columbia University that helped us think about the development of Maplewood Village. And they talked about the untapped resource of using Dunnell Road and some of the other roads, Baker Street, as a way in which we can encourage shopper parking, particularly in the evening and on weekends, and use a sort of wayfaring signage, or banners, whatever, to make it more connected. I think what we're looking at is we're talking about renovating this building and doing some things for the village that we're going to have a more coordinated effort. About just in the retail, you know, I guess I had a little bit of a difference of opinion about this question. I think we're opening more stores than we're closing. There's always going to be, in the small business world, cycles of businesses. They come and go. People retire. People find that they can't make what they're able to do. But I think we have a lot of people still interested in coming to Maplewood to start businesses. Irvington Avenue is full. There's no vacancies. Maplewood Village is full. And we're getting a lot of interest up on Springfield Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
And not enough time to address this question, which really resonates with me personally. As some of you know, I grew up in a small business. My immigrant parents ran a diner, Greek immigrants diner, how stereotypical, right? Check. So this really is very personal to me. This idea of struggling to grow your business when you have a lot of competition and very little support, and sustaining your growth in the community. And it is really a multi-pronged approach. I also disagree with the premise of the question. I don't find that our retail, our local merchants are not viable, either on the village side or on the Springfield Avenue side. And while we do have a parking issue that we do need to address, I don't think that our retail's closings relate to lack of parking. Certainly on the Springfield Avenue side, we do have a lot of parking in a lot of areas. What we could do is better signage for that parking. For instance, there's a great lot behind Yale Street, it's free. There's another municipal parking lot further down. So parking isn't an issue on Springfield Avenue. Springfield Avenue, by the way, enjoying an incredible renaissance thanks to the amazing efforts of the Springfield Partnership. Something that we should do on Irvington Avenue as well to improve those businesses. The idea here is, I think the solution is we have to support our local businesses, and every single one of us is responsible for that in terms of shopping local and supporting our local merchants and spreading the word of mouth and doing buy local campaigns, and also engaging in, as a township, as a governing body, engaging in commercial tenant protections so that some of our minority-owned businesses and our immigrant businesses, they could be in a better negotiating position with regards to renegotiating their leases and not being priced out because of greedy landlords or developers. There's so much more to say about this, and I urge you all to go to my website, deandapples.com, to get more information about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Somerville.
Sure. So I think parking absolutely is a factor, especially for retail. I think as you think about where we're sitting, you know, in the village, in Springfield Avenue, there's lots of small decisions, incremental decisions that get made that contribute to the situation. We have a new 120-seat restaurant going into the Claris building, which is where the post office used to be. That's going to make the parking situation worse. I'm happy to have another restaurant in Maplewood. I would have rather seen that restaurant and liquor license on Springfield Avenue so that we've got kind of 2 or 3 destinations on a Friday and Saturday night so that we're spreading our population across the town and we don't have taxing one area or the other. I think retail is fundamentally changing, so I like what I'm seeing on Springfield Avenue with some of the experience-based businesses. We have Blue Life Karate, which has been very successful inside the old Bank of America building. The gym on Springfield Avenue just opened, looks fantastic. It's a destination, it's not just, it used to be a mattress factory or store. So I think that's the right direction to go. But at the end of the day, we really do have to make, I think, fundamental changes about how we approach Springfield Avenue. And I'm not confident that we have the right people in place to make those changes. And I'm saying that more as a resident of Prospect Street, right next to Springfield Avenue. And I've lived here 9 years, and I just haven't seen us make the progress. And I don't have the answers because I'm not an expert, but I think we need to get that expert to help us really change what we're doing with Springfield Avenue, because I don't think it changes without changing the people involved.
Thank you. Okay, we have the first question, and I think Michelle is going around with the cards. So that if you have a question, please write it down. If your handwriting isn't that great, can you make it as good as it can be so I can read it? And please, no personal attacks. We want to talk about the issues. We have one other question too before we start going into your question. Well, this came from the audience. The answer to this one is only for a minute, so we got to think fast. How much money will new development produce for Maplewood? Figure that out. With the tax abatements and payments in lieu of taxes given to new projects, what is the benefit to Maplewood? And the first person to answer will be Mr. Deckers.
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It really is. And if there is data on this question, data to answer this, I'd love to see it. I don't think that we have been as informed in our decision-making about this as we could have been. So, a lot of the residential development has been positive, and some of the developers have given back to the community, even those who received a pilot or an abatement in terms of putting money into fixing our Maplewood pool, as Avalon Bay has done. But I would like to see us negotiate better for our town. To do things that are in our best interest, to get parking out of it, to get money into our open trust fund out of it, to get money into our affordability trust fund so again we can build senior housing and make our town affordable for everyone, and so on and so forth. So if someone could show us the data, I'd love to see it, but unfortunately we don't have that, and I just don't feel that we have negotiated in the best way that we could have done.
Thank you. Mr. Summersgill.
Thank you. So I came from a place of thinking that high-density development would probably be in the town's best interest from a financial perspective. You've got more people and less space, so more tax dollars. But I've since gotten and done the research, and it just doesn't show that, especially in a town like Maplewood, where our infrastructure is not set up to support it. And that could be sewer lines, that could be roads, it could be emergency response equipment. There's any number of infrastructure costs. And if you think that it has benefited us, you can just look at our taxes for the last 10, 12 years. We've gone right up to the cap every time. And then you would think one year we'd get a 1% or a 0.5% or something, but we've not. We've continued to spend, and that tells me that there hasn't been a financial impact for our town. And when I think of 2 developments going in by the high school, Gleason's being replaced by another apartment building, it'll be a nightmare crossing Valley Street on Parker. Somewhere it's got to stop, and someone's going to have to say no, and we've got to stop granting variances that give us results that we don't want. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson.
Saying doesn't work.
Yeah, so just a couple of facts. The station house is not a tax abatement property. It was owned by the town before. It's now got 50 apartments in there. It is the 3rd highest taxpayer in the community. It pays $325,000 a year in taxes. The Maplewood Crossing is a tax abated property. Before that, it was a Superfund site. It was highly contaminated. It was the old Universal Chain Factory. It now pays over $230,000 a year in a pilot agreement. The building that they just built in the front is not tax abated, and that is assessed, that results in $106,000 a year in property taxes. We have 3 abated properties in town. 3. The station, Maplewood Crossing, the post office, Claris, and the Avalon Bay. That's it. Everything else is paying full taxes. So not everything is being abated. I do think that the information is there. We are still working. We won't know what Avalon Bay will finalize at until they're fully rented up. That's how you have to assess it after it's done. But we know from looking at all the information, it'll be over $500,000 in taxes from Avalon Bay. So we're getting, these units are producing taxes for us. It is helping us to maintain the taxes at the 2% cap or below that we've been able to do over the years.
Thank you. Okay, now we have some questions. Thank you. Some good ones. I will read the first one. The answers are a minute each. If we want, if you wish, we can do a 30-second rebuttal. We'll just have to watch the clock. Okay. You don't have to do a rebuttal, only if you want to. Okay, the first question is, do you propose we hire a new police chief for our town? There was talk of promoting one from within. This concerns me in that we had a police chief who did not do a good job mentoring and leading our officers. What would you do to ensure that the police chief will be able to make positive changes, such as those suggested by Somewhat Justice? And the first person to respond will be Mr. Summersgill.
I think what's clear is that we need to take the necessary steps to restore the faith of the public in the institution as far as the police department, but I think in the township committee as well. I think it's really not for me to say what the qualifications are of the other officers or captains that are in the force as far as whether they're ready to be the police chief or not. I've heard some feedback that there are good candidates. I think you cast a wide net to make sure we get the right person. For me, the right person is someone that has experience in executing de-escalation techniques, community policing, I think racial sensitivity training, building that bond between the community and police. And if we can get that with a current member of the force, then that's great. They've got institutional knowledge. But if the recommendation is that we need to make a significant change and change the culture of the department, then I would also support police chief coming in from the outside. But I do think we need to prioritize the search, because the longer that we go without that position to fill, it's again deteriorates the public trust, and it also puts our community at risk.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca.
The choices we have, either we select a new police chief or we appoint a police director. The police director is a civilian, and we've had some municipalities do that, some municipalities do the police chief. We're still looking at the legal aspects of whether we have to hire within a police chief or we can have a national search. I think the township committee is on record right now is looking for having a national search for a police chief. And there are some legal issues that we're looking at, some legislation that we have to analyze. I think whoever goes in there, we're going to work with to make sure that he or she is doing the training that was sorely needed. We've gotten a great set of recommendations from our Hillard-Hines report as to the training that we should do. We've also been working with the Community Coalition on Race on some additional training that has to be incorporated in that. So I think we have a roadmap going forward, and we just need the right person in there leading the police department.
Thank you. And Mr. Davis.
Thank you. I agree that the longer that we wait to address this issue, the more dangerous it will be for us. We definitely need to have a new chief sooner rather than later. And I agree with the recommendations of the recent consultant, Hillard-Hines, who studied this. And whoever the new chief is, they need to be behind a culture of community policing, a culture where rank and file officers can speak up when they see something that they don't agree with. It's clear now after everything that happened last year that's been revealed around the country and reported at this point, that there was a paramilitary culture here in Maplewood in our police department where officers could not speak up, and when they did, they were demoted or they were blocked. And I've heard that personally from officers who have spoken to me about it. And everyone is happy that Chief Cimino is gone and looking forward to new leadership. So the leadership has to be behind anti-bias training, de-escalation techniques, and greater community engagement. That is something we have not done in Maplewood ever, and we must do. And that's what I would be looking forward to. And I would add to that my current experience in hiring and staffing, where I work with Fortune 500 companies in building cultures of greater inclusiveness and meritocracy and collegiality, that expertise will be very valuable in this most important effort going forward.
Thank you. And we have a question on a senior bus. There is only a small 20-seat bus that we can use, that seniors, I'm assuming, can use between the hours of 10 and 4 because it is needed for train station service. Will there ever be a bus for a larger group of people, say 50, so that we can go on trips and for at least 8 hours? Also, we need a bus on weekends, perhaps. First person to answer will be Mr. DeLuca.
So this is one of the two issues that Soma Two Towns for All Ages is really going to focus on next year. We're looking at transportation, we're looking at ways in which we can actually provide an Uber service for our older adults so that if they need rides for the doctor or for an appointment or just to go somewhere where they need to go, we'll be able to hook up with them and subsidize some of that cost. We are looking at ways in which we can consolidate the bus services in the two towns. That eventually, I hope we would have at one point in the future, a consolidated senior program that would work for both towns. We do have trips, we hire buses. I don't think we'll ever have a 50-passenger bus ourselves. We have multi-use buses. These buses are expensive. It's ways in which we can use it for the jitney service and the seniors. We are looking at, as I said, at ways to increase the two areas of transportation, the other increases affordable housing. So yes, we will do more with what we have as we go forward with our Soma Two Towns for All Ages.
Thank you. Mr. Dacus.
I agree that increasing our jitney service would be a great service to all of us in the community, not just to seniors and getting around and getting to doctor's visits, but to everyone. Bring people, if we can create a jitney service that does a loop from one side of town to the other, even on the weekends during certain hours, then we could really deal with the issue that we talked about in the beginning tonight. This idea that we're a divided town, we're divided geographically, we're divided culturally, we're divided racially. So I would support such a measure, and I would look into it to see how we can get it done and how would it work administratively and how we could afford it to do it as well. Thank you.
And Mr. Summerskill. Thank you.
Yeah, this isn't a new need. It's something that the town's been asking for, especially this population. So it's time to stop looking into it, and it's time to start doing. Sharing the jitney buses is not the right answer. Those buses are not configured for seniors. The stairs are not right. The seats are not right. And it's something where it's a real opportunity. So the next time we do buy a jitney bus, then we should buy one with that population in mind, so that becomes the de facto, senior transportation of a bus, and then maybe it's the backup jitney or something along those lines. But I think it's a shame that we have 4,000 to 5,000 residents in town over the age of 55, and we can't find $100,000 to buy a bus. They contribute a significant amount of tax dollars that they don't get back, that goes to schools and other services that they don't use. This is something that I would prioritize. I understand that you make decisions, something that you want to do this year means you can't do it something else. That's what you elect us to decide, but the senior bus is something that would be a priority for me.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to add anything as a rebuttal? Taxes. I combined a couple of questions here. What would you do to lower property taxes? And is there anything you feel you can do to ameliorate the proposed changes to the tax codes, eliminating the federal deductions for state and local taxes if that passes? And the first person to answer will be Mr. Deffis.
What was the last part of that, Diane? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm not sure you can write it, but the question is asked, is there anything you see you might be able to do to ameliorate the proposed changes to the tax code, which will eliminate the federal deductions for state and local taxes, which means increasing our budget?
Right, that would be disastrous
I know, but
to-
somebody else.
to our community, and to so many communities. In terms of reducing our taxes here locally, we really have to work with our state reps and lobby them towards tax reform. I feel confident that for the first time in over a decade, we have an opportunity, we have a good year with the incoming administration, and folks who are really interested in looking into this, and specific initiatives such as a higher income, a new tax, and in terms of getting us finally some of our fair share in state funding to help us with infrastructure improvements, to help us with our schools, and so on and so forth. Shared services that we talked about earlier is definitely part of this problem in terms of reducing our tax burden. But it really is at the state level, and we can be very active as a township in terms of making that happen for us here.
Thank you, Mr. Somerset.
Sure. So I think for me, the first thing is Trenton is not the answer. I lived in New Jersey for almost 40 years, and I'm giving up on Trenton. And maybe that makes me a bad politician. I don't know, but I'll take what I can get, which is inside this town, what we control. And if Trenton comes through and saves us, then we'll get double benefit. I'd say the first thing is I'm not a big fan of debt, taking on debt at the township level. Debt makes everything more expensive. You see with the proposal in the library, it's a $20 million project. There's $2 million in debt expense. And that's $2 million that we could be spending on something else that instead is going to the debt, servicing the debt. You see in our budget this year, we've got a 13% debt load. So our total budget, 13% is going to debt-related expense. That's 13% in services that we could be adding. And if we hadn't incurred that debt, that's 13% less in taxes we could have paid this year. So that's a fundamental difference. I'm not a fan of taking on debt, even at the low municipal rates. It just makes everything cost more, and we could use that money to keep it in town.
Mr. DeLuca.
The biggest driver of property tax increases in the future will be if we lose the cap on arbitration expenses for police and fire. Right now, it's capped at 2%. If we lose that, and it's potentially, it's a possibility, if we lose that, we're going to have a tough time controlling property taxes. Because the police and fire will go out and get 4 and 5 and 6 and 7% increases annually through these arbitrators. So that's very important. And the township committee is taking a position in favor of maintaining the 2% cap. We've also taken a position against the elimination of the federal tax exemptions for local and state taxes. And that would kill us here. It would really hurt a number of high-tax states. But that also talks about the fundamental changes we need. I do have faith in Trenton. I would urge you to vote for Murphy for governor, because I think his plan is better as to how to bring aid to our towns and also to our schools. I think he's talked about reasonable tax increases, and he's laid out a roadmap to do that. And I think that's how we will get some control over our local property taxes.
Thank you. Here's a question about the new police station building. Is the new police station building fully used or not? Can we, if it isn't, can we use some of the vacant areas for other financial gain? And the first person to answer will be Mr. Somerset.
I'm probably the least qualified person to answer that, although Dean, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. I will say that philosophically, we need to do a better job of space planning in town, especially when it comes to collaboration with the school board. Just to give you one example, the school board meeting room had a structural collapse. I think we spent something like $400,000 to replace it. I would much rather have seen the school board meet once a month in the police station on Springfield Avenue, at the Maplewood Town Hall, South Lawrence SOPAC, or somewhere else we could have done, and we could have either avoided the $400,000 or spent that $400,000 on educational space, VOTEC space, community room, but instead we just do the same thing, and we need some creativity, you need some vision, and that's an area that you'd see a different perspective if I was elected to the township committee.
Thank you. Mr. DeLuca.
Most welcome.
So the answer is no, it's not overbuilt. It's essentially a 4-story building. You have a basement floor that's loaded with stuff. Our first floor are offices, dispatch, the courtroom. Our municipal clerk violations bureau is we need more space. Then the next floor is the offices, it's the youth aid bureau, detectives, and what have you. And then on top of that is a storage area and potential growth. So it was built purposely that way, and we also thought, as we have absorbed South Orange Court there, we needed that extra space to accommodate the records and things like that. But also, it allowed us to look at other potential shared services that we might bring there, specialized details, or any kind of training facility that we might do. So it's not overbuilt. In fact, it needs some more parking, but otherwise, it's the building itself is not overbuilt.
And Mr. Davis.
Just to reply what Mike said, I've been outside of the police station many times in terms of protesting, but I haven't been inside of it a lot. So and I'm happy about that. I think Mayor DeLuca, who's most qualified to answer this question, answered it pretty well. The building is not overbuilt, and I do agree with Mike in terms of having creative solutions as to where we can consolidate space and use space in a better manner. But this does go to something no one has asked about yet, but referred to very briefly, which is the proposal for a new library. It's very clear when you come here that we don't have enough meeting spaces in town, not for our students to study and meet with their mentors and teachers, not for our seniors to engage in community space, not for our other residents to engage in other cultural activities. We really make the best use that we can with this building, which is falling apart, but the new proposed library would give us the opportunity to have the meeting space that we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. How would you go about involving more talented citizens to serve the community as volunteers, economic development, with boards? And the first person to answer would be Mr. DeLuca.
So this has been a challenge over the years of recruiting people. One of the things that we've said at the Township Committee this year is that we're going to try to bring down the age of the volunteers on our boards and committees. We appoint roughly a little over 100 people to various boards and committees, everything from the swimming pool to the planning board to the library board. And the idea is to try to get folks involved. People have a lot to do. They got families to raise, they got to go back and forth on the train to New York City and their jobs. What we have to try to do is to get them to see how they can, the piece that they can play in making this a more effective civic engagement opportunity. We've worked with the Community Coalition on Race to bring more people of color on our boards and committees. And I would say that I'm willing to stand on my record of my appointments to the library board and the planning board, which I do personally. You can look at those, and they're diverse and they're wide range as far as ages and perspectives. So that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
We have a long way to go in terms of tapping our significant talent that we have right here in our community, not just on serving on important boards, but actually being involved in shaping the future of their community. For me in particular, it's very important that we tap into subject matter experts with respect to economic development. I would like us to have an advisory committee, an advisory development committee that would be comprised of volunteers from the community, and there are those people out there, the land use attorneys and the architects, some of them are my neighbors, and the financial analysts who would gladly give their time, despite their busy schedules, to help us review pro formas before they go to the planning board for sign-off, essentially, before they're negotiated at a later stage and we can't do anything about it. And that would be something that I would really want to focus on personally in my first term. Thank you.
And Mr. Summersgill.
Thank you. I've seen this, the value of this firsthand a couple of times. First time was at the community meeting at Columbia High School. I'm a school resource officer. And there's two members of the community who worked at Rutgers in criminal justice. They provided statistics and analysis and assessment of activities in the schools, and they basically gave an objective perspective to the audience and to the superintendent and to the teachers and to the students that were there. And I was thinking, wow, we have them sitting in our community. I'm so glad that we got them engaged. I have a family friend who works for the retired administrators and superintendents. I think it's a fund or association. I was like, she's who we should be tapping into for the search for a new superintendent. And she's got talent. We need to ask her, and you got to inspire her to get involved. And how you inspire people is you listen to them and you show them that they're valued, and then you thank them for their efforts, and you encourage opposing views, and you have a healthy discussion that makes us all better. And so I think that's the approach that you need to take. And there's, as my peers have mentioned, there's plenty of opportunity still in the town to take that approach.
Thank you. We have another question here, and it's directed at Mr. DeLuca. I'm assuming as the incumbent. How much does the township give annually to the CCR? And does the township give financial support to any other nonprofit organizations? So Mr. DeLuca, that goes to you.
I don't remember how much we give to the CCR. We make an annual contribution. I don't even want to guess. It's over $15,000. As far as other nonprofits, we YouthNet, we give a contribution to YouthNet, and I think that might be the only two.
Okay.
Yeah, I would not count the partnership and the alliance. We do make a contribution. We have what's called a service agreement. We give them money so that they can maintain the village or maintain Springfield Avenue using buckets and brooms. This way we don't have to pay that out of our DPW, so it's a way we can do that. But I think as far as the contributions to nonprofits, it's the CCR and YouthNet. We do make an in-kind contribution to the Civic Association 4th of July by providing police, fire, and those services too.
Thank you. Would either of the other two have a question to answer or respond to that? Okay, all right. We have a last question, unless anyone else has one coming forward. And this is kind of an interesting one. We're going to start with Mr. Davis on this. And you have to tell us, what do you admire the most about the other two candidates sitting at the table?
That's a good question, and an important question, because ultimately, our governing body has to be collaborative and collegial. And that means working together as a body, but also working with the community and listening to everyone's perspective and finding the solutions together. Because the best ideas tend to come from the ground. They don't come from the top down. And so I would say, with respect to Mayor DeLuca, whether you disagree with some of his decisions or you agree with others, he has a long record of public service. When you have a long record, there are some things that don't turn out the way that you intended them to, even though you were motivated by good. Mr. DeLuca is the consummate public servant. The man has committed himself, his whole family has, to this town in ways that not many others will ever fill those shoes. And I aspire to that kind of public service with respect to, and his progressiveness, because I do believe that our community is becoming more and more progressive. With respect to Mike, I am very impressed with what Mike brings to the table as an attorney who's worked in financial cases and other types of cases where data and analytics are really important, where you have to make an informed decision based on stats and spreadsheets. That really appeals to me. I like that Mike brings that to the table, because I do think going forward, we do have to do things differently if we want to be more efficient and if we want to govern better.
Thank you. Mr. Summersgill.
Sure, in no particular order.
No.
I'd start with Mayor DeLuca. I think what strikes me about Mayor DeLuca is just his engagement in the community. I mean, he is at a ton of events. You can't find a picture of a Easter egg hunt or a line dance or a ribbon cutting without the mayor. But I think that's the best part of government, when it's accessible. You can touch it, you can talk to it. He's out in the community, and I really respect that. And if the election doesn't go your way, maybe I would nominate you for mayor emeritus, so you can still do the ribbon cuttings and the line dancing. And we've got several members of the township committee, hopefully, that would support that. I just always appreciated that about you. And for Mr. Davis, I get a sense that you're a selfless type person. You move to town, you jump right in. Activism is usually about something more than yourself. And I think while it's motivated from inside as a personal mission, I think your contribution to the cause, whatever it is that you put your heart and soul into, is appreciated. And I'm a big fan of doers, and you strike me as a doer.
Thank you. And Mr. DeLuca.
With Mr. Summersgill, I have to say I respect him being a Republican in such a Democratic town. It's just, it shows a lot of strength in what you believe in. Mike is somebody who's been volunteering over the years. He's got involved now with the Hilton Neighborhood Association. We serve together on the executive committee. He's involved in the 4th of July events and other events, and he's even doing he's a cook too. He's doing some ribs, I think, for Sunday to raise some money for disaster areas. With Mr. Daffis, Dean, I like Dean because he's a hugger. He hugs everybody. He's somebody who gets engaged. He's a smart guy. He's thoughtful. He is willing to stand up to power, which I think is very important. He and I have had some differences of opinion as to how to go forward. I think I like that. He's independent, and he does. I use the same term that Mike used. He jumps in. He's involved in the library and CCR and everything else. He's really trying to make the community here, that is his new community, really as best it can be. And I really respect that about Dean.
Thank you. That was a good question. Seeing no more questions coming forward, let's move to the closing statements. Okay, this is also a 2-minute statement, and we go in the reverse order of the opening statement. So, Mr. DeLuca, you go first.
I opened.
Oh, sorry, you're right. I'm reading the wrong one. Mr. Summersgill, you go first. Sorry.
Thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters again, everyone for coming out. Really enjoyed discussing our town with you. It's a town I have a great deal of pride in. Hopefully that comes across, and why I do it is I have something that I feel like I can contribute. Fighting out there to try to get the chance to do it. It's as Mayor DeLuca mentioned, it's an uphill slog sometimes. But hopefully that shows you how important it is to me to get this job, and it's something that I'll continue to do and continue to fight for, and hopefully then make it over the hump, and then I get to really directly work for you, which is what I'm aspiring to. So again, thank you all. I hope you consider voting for me. Feel free to balance your vote, split your vote, just vote for me. Whatever happens in that voting booth is between you and the machine and the monitors. But again, thank you for coming, and I really enjoyed it, and enjoyed being up here with you gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Daffis.
A good sense of humor is important, so thanks, Mike. Thank you again to the League of Women Voters, and thank you all for being here. I've enjoyed my time with you. I hope you feel that you've gotten a better idea of who I am and what I stand for and what I bring to the table. It's impossible, obviously, within the confines of the couple of hours that we spent together to get a greater sense of someone and everything that they do. Ultimately, for a non-incumbent candidate, it comes down to character, right? That's what you're going to vote on. I don't have a record yet. Mike doesn't have a record yet. We are both very actively and substantively engaged in the community and committed to service, right? And making our town better. But ultimately, you have to make the decision based on who has the right personality, who is empathic enough, who is going to listen listen before they act, who is going to be best informed, who is going to be thoughtful, who is going to represent the values of all of us in this community, not just a certain few, right? Because we're serving the entire community all across town. I am very humbled that I have the support of Republicans and Democrats alike who have served this town already, who know what it takes in terms of personality, in terms of moral aptitude, in terms of leadership qualities. And these folks, whose families go back generations in this community and have great history in this community, who built this community, they have seen some of those important qualities in me. So I hope that you join me. I would love to work with every single one of you, even if we disagree on essential things. I want to hear from you, I want to work with you, and I want you to join me in this endeavor and vote for me on November 7th. We also have an opportunity as a community, and I promise I'm going to stop in a second. We have an important opportunity to make history in our community. A lot of people say, oh, you know, it's not a big deal that we have an LGBT candidate, and yet it is a big deal because we haven't had one in our progressive and diverse community. So think about what that does, what message that would send to our children right here in our community, who are looking, who are listening, who are hoping to find role models. And think about what message that sends to our state, outside of our community, and to Washington right now. Under a current administration which is trying to roll back and regress and break communities down. It's a powerful statement, and I hope all of you will join me in doing a great thing on November 7th. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least,
Thank you. Thanks again for coming out tonight. I'm going to ask you to vote for me on November 7th. I'm also going to ask you to vote yes on public question number 1, which is the library funding. Very, very important. We have an opportunity here to get significant state dollars, couple that with public investment and private investment locally to make a difference in this building. We didn't spend a lot of time tonight talking about this, but this is really a game changer. Those new folks who are moving to town expect us to have first-class services and programs for themselves and their children. That's why they're coming here, that's why they're decided this is the place to raise their family. And so this library is quaint and it's nice, but it's not for the future, and that's what we have to do. So please vote for me and go down there and vote on that ballot question number 1. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve. You know, there's family, there's your place of worship, and to me there's the community. To be able to serve the community in which you live has just been such a rewarding opportunity for me. To be able to sit down with a lot of people in this room, to bang our heads together and try to figure out the best way to move forward. That's what I want to continue to do. That fire still burns in me to do that. And so I'm going to ask you to give me another chance to go out there and fight for you like I fought for you with New Jersey Transit, like I fought for all of us 5 years ago this month when Sandy hit this state. These are the things that we have to be prepared to do. I think I've been battle tested, and I would ask you to give me another opportunity to continue to serve the community. Thank you.
thank you. That ends the program. Thank you very much to the candidates. Your answers I thought were thoughtful and informative, and this was the most polite candidate I think I've done in a long time, and I appreciate that.
Well, we could rebut it for 30 seconds.
We have 2 more minutes, so we want to do a final report.
Wow, why did you say that? Thank you.
Thank you to Michelle for the and thank you all for coming out and listening and asking good questions. And don't forget to vote on November 7th. And if you have not registered and you want to vote on November 7th, pick up the form at the back of the room and fill it out and send it in immediately. And you'll be able to. So thank you very much. Everyone get home safe.